Ever wonder what really sets apart the ultra successful, day after day? We've plunged into this analytical report looking at the daily habits of billionaires. And the fascinating thing is, it's not just about pure hustle. There's actually quite a bit of science backing up what they do. So this deep dive is really tailored for you, pulling out those key insights.
Exactly. And we're looking beyond just a simple observation here. This report, it identifies these recurring patterns, right? Behaviors linked to high performance, longevity, wealth creation, and it's grounded in proper research psychology, neuroscience, behavioral economics, things like that. Think of it like a sort of scientific blueprint for peak performance.
Right. This analytical report we've gone through, it really tries to get into the nitty-gritty of how these consistent daily actions can, like, snowball. They build up into pretty significant advantages. So our goal today is just to distill this down for everyone, kind of a shortcut maybe, to understand how putting intentional practices in place can lead to some serious personal and professional growth without getting too bogged down in all the academic jargon.
Yeah, keep it practical.
Okay, so let's dive in. One of the first things that really jumps out is this idea of um, early rising and having these consistent morning routines. You see big names, right? Tim Cook, Richard Branson, Oprah Winfrey, all reportedly waking up somewhere between, 4:30 and 6:00 a.m. Now, thinking about your own day, what does that first hour or so usually look like? Is it a bit of a race or more deliberate?
Well, what's interesting there is the biology underneath it all. There was a Harvard Business Review study, I think back in 2010. It suggested that people who identify as morning people, they tend to be more proactive, which, naturally links up with being more productive. Makes you wonder, doesn't it, if there's kind of a biological edge to grabbing those early hours?
It does, yeah. It's almost like getting a head start, a strategic advantage before the rest of the world is even really going.
Precisely. And if you think about how our cognitive resources fluctuate, some research like Baumeister's work from 98, it indicates that willpower, self-control, it's often at its peak right after rest,
Yeah.
like overnight. So these early risers, they're essentially tapping into this prime mental energy reservoir. And they often use this time for really focused stuff, things like reading where you need comprehension, or exercise that requires discipline, or even like strategic planning for the day or week before all the usual demands and distractions start kicking in.
Okay, so it's not just about having more hours in the day. It's about using the hours when your brain is arguably at its shortest, strategically,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It seems like consistently starting the day with that kind of intention could lead to better time management overall, a more proactive approach maybe,
Mm.
and boosted cognitive performance. You can definitely see how those traits would be super valuable for, well, anyone in leadership or trying to innovate.
Yeah, definitely. And it sort of raises a thought, maybe for our listeners too. Even if you don't feel like a natural early bird, are there maybe one or two small tweaks you could try in your morning routine just to capture even a little bit of those potential benefits? Perhaps shifting just one focused task a bit earlier.
Hmm. Interesting point. Okay, another habit that pops up again and again with these successful folks is regular physical exercise. We're talking people like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark Cuban, making it a real priority, even with their completely packed schedules. Thinking about your own week, how consistent are you with physical activity?
Well, the science supporting exercise, it goes way beyond just physical health. There was a finding from Harvard Medical School, 2013, I think. It really emphasized how regular aerobic exercise gives a significant boost to memory and those executive functions, the planning, organizing skills, and even creative thinking. It's kind of like a tune-up for the brain.
Wow, a tune-up for the brain. I like that. So it's not just staying fit physically, it's actually making your brain work better.
Exactly. And then there's the stress side of things. Research mentioned in Psychology Today around 2011 showed how exercise is really effective at lowering cortisol levels. That's the main stress hormone. And at the same time, it releases endorphins, which, boost your mood. So that all contributes to greater emotional stability. Super important when you're dealing with the ups and downs of big ambitions, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's this powerful mix, a sharper mind for the tough tasks and a more resilient emotional state to handle the pressure. It really highlights how connected physical and mental well-being are, especially in those really demanding jobs.
And what's really notable is the consistency, how they prioritize it. Despite everything else they have going on, it suggests they really understand this isn't just a nice to have, it's fundamental. It supports their overall effectiveness, their stamina.
Makes sense. Okay, let's shift gears a little. Let's talk about another way these high achievers fuel their minds, reading, and this commitment to lifelong learning. The report highlights Warren Buffett famously spending, 5+ hours a day reading?
Incredible, isn't it?
It is. And then you've got the reading list should be Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg.
Hmm.
Thinking about your own routine, how much time do you usually set aside for reading or, you know, actively seeking out new knowledge?
Well, the research definitely backs up the power of reading. There was a 2013 study in PNAS, that's the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. It indicated that engaging with text, it improves various brain functions, right? It enhances our capacity for empathy, lets us step into other viewpoints, and it even seems to increase mental flexibility, our ability to adapt to new info and situations.
Mental flexibility. Yeah, that feels absolutely critical today. Things change so fast.
Totally. And if you zoom out a bit, look at the bigger picture. This dedication to continuous learning, often through reading, it kind of works like compound interest, but for your brain. The more knowledge you gather, the better you get at connecting dots, innovating, making smart strategic calls. Your whole intellectual base just grows, kind of exponentially over time.
Ah, okay. So it's not just about the facts you pick up from one book or article. It's
Right.
about building this rich, interconnected web of understanding that you can pull from later in all sorts of ways.
Yeah. Yeah, that really reinforces why cultivating a growth mindset is so important. Staying adaptable.
Hmm. It does make you think, though. What are some ways you actively try to keep learning? Is reading your main thing, or do you use other channels too? Podcasts, courses.
Good question. Okay, another fascinating habit that comes up is goal setting and visualization. The report mentions people like Oprah, even Jim Carrey, talking publicly about visualizing their goals. Do you personally have, like, clearly written down goals? And is visualization something you've ever experimented with?
Well, the science behind goal setting is pretty solid. You've got goal setting theory, Locke and Latham champion that. It clearly shows that setting goals that are specific and challenging, that leads to much higher performance. It just gives you clear direction, focuses your effort.
Yeah, that makes intuitive sense, right? If you don't know the target, how do you aim? Exactly. And then the visualization piece. Delving into the neuroscience there, studies like Driscoll's work from '94 suggest that mentally picturing yourself succeeding, it actually activates similar brain regions as doing the thing for real. It's almost like a mental rehearsal for success, strengthening those neural pathways.
Wow. Okay, so it's way more than just like positive thinking. It's actually kind of priming your brain for action, building familiarity with success. That sounds like a really potent mix for boosting motivation, sharpening focus, and maybe increasing persistence when you hit roadblocks, all essential for those big long-term projects.
Right. And what's interesting is for many of these high achievers, it's not a one-off thing. They seem to revisit their written goals regularly and actively use visualization. It's an ongoing practice to stay clear and driven.
Okay, maintaining that clarity makes sense. Now let's talk about finding some inner calm amidst all the chaos. Meditation and mindfulness. You hear billionaires like Ray Dalio, Mark Benioff, Ariana Huffington really advocating for these practices. Have you ever incorporated meditation or mindfulness into your own routine?
Well, the amount of scientific evidence supporting meditation and mindfulness has really grown, hasn't it? There was a study in JAMA Internal Medicine, 2014, I believe. It highlighted how effective it is in reducing symptoms of anxiety, depression, also improving attention span, and enhancing emotional regulation, basically, managing your emotional responses better.
Those all sound like incredibly valuable skills, especially for navigating high-pressure stuff, complex decisions.
Absolutely. And then there's the idea of neuroplasticity, the brain's amazing ability to change. A Harvard MGH study from 2011 actually showed that regular meditation practice can lead to an increase in gray matter, specifically in brain areas linked to learning, memory, and emotional processing.
Whoa. So it's not just about feeling calm now. It could actually be leading to long-term structural brain changes that support, well, better thinking and feeling.
That's the implication, yeah.
So it seems like cultivating mindfulness could really lead to greater clarity, help fight burnout, and even foster better relationships, which is key for leadership, right?
Right. Absolutely. It does make you wonder, though, in our super fast-paced, often overwhelming world, do you consciously carve out moments for stillness, for reflection? Even just a few minutes might add up to significant benefits over time.
Food for thought. Okay, let's move on to the power of human connection, strategic networking, and really managing relationships effectively. The report emphasizes that successful billionaires actively invest time, energy into cultivating mentorships, partnerships, nurturing their networks. What about your own efforts there? How intentional are you about building those valuable connections?
Well, there's this concept, social capital theory. Bert talked about it back in 2004. It basically says our social networks give us access to all sorts of resources, information, influence, opportunities. And it's not just about having tons of connections, it's about the quality and the strategic nature of those relationships.
Right, so less about just collecting contacts on LinkedIn
Yeah.
and more about building real, mutually beneficial relationships.
Precisely. And behavioral science really backs up the role of trust and reciprocity. You need that for long-term success in business, in collaborations, strong, lasting relationships. They're built on mutual respect, shared value.
Yeah, it sounds like intentionally building those high-quality relationships can really open doors you didn't expect, provide crucial support when things get tough, and just generally speed up progress towards your goals.
And what's striking again is the intentionality, how deliberately these folks seem to nurture their networks. It's not left to chance, it's a priority.
Right. Okay, time. Arguably our most finite resource. So it's always interesting to see how highly successful people manage it. The report mentions Elon Musk and his famous 5-minute time blocks,
Yeah, intense.
and Bill Gates' think weeks.
Hmm. Thinking about your own schedule, what would you say are some of your biggest time wasters or time drains? Well, those examples really highlight the impact of focused time management. It makes me think of Cal Newport's concept, deep work.
All right.
This idea that sustained periods of really focused, uninterrupted concentration on demanding tasks, that's where the big gains in productivity and mastery come from.
That really resonates. Yeah, it's so hard to get into that deep focus when you're constantly switching tasks.
Exactly. And if you look at cognitive load theory, that constant task switching, it's shown to seriously reduce performance and just drain your mental energy. So by blocking out specific time for focused work, you minimize that drain. You create the actual space needed for deeper thinking, real progress.
Okay, so it's about maximizing efficiency, yes, but also creating that dedicated space for the kind of thinking needed for breakthroughs.
Mm.
For leadership, it sounds like being super deliberate with how you allocate your time could be truly transformative.
Mm-hmm. And it leads to the question, doesn't it? How intentionally are you structuring your day right now? Are you actively carving out those blocks for deep work on your most important stuff?
Challenging question. Okay, finally, a habit that might seem a bit counterintuitive given their immense wealth: frugality, and this sort of value-driven mindset. The report points out that despite huge fortunes, many billionaires, like Warren Buffett or the late founder of IKEA, Ingvar Kamprad, were known for being remarkably frugal. Thinking about your own spending, can you recall a recent time you made a particularly mindful, value-conscious decision?
Well, the principles behind this, they connect back to that classic idea of delayed gratification. Remember the marshmallow test?
Oh yeah, definitely.
That ability to resist the immediate impulse for a bigger future reward. It's a strong predictor of long-term success in, well, all sorts of areas.
That study is just so telling, isn't it? Amazing how simple it was, yet so insightful.
It really is. And if you think about things like minimalism or the concept of decision fatigue, simplifying your life, being intentional about possessions, it can actually free up mental energy. And that bandwidth can then go towards more strategic thinking, bigger decisions.
Ah, okay, so it's not really about being stingy. It's more about a fundamental respect for resources and consciously avoiding that lifestyle creep that can distract from long-term goals.
Exactly.
It sounds like this frugal mindset, even when you're incredibly wealthy, reflects a deep discipline, a sustained focus on creating real, lasting value, not just short-term indulgence.
And what's really insightful is how that value-driven mindset often seems to filter into their business decisions, too. You see this constant focus on efficiency, maximizing ROI, long-term sustainability. It's all connected.
Okay. So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, it's really clear these aren't just, random quirks of the super rich. These are often deliberate, science-backed behaviors. And when you practice them consistently, they compound.
Yeah.
They can lead to pretty extraordinary results over time. It's just a powerful reminder, isn't it? How intentional choices about our daily routines can really shape our path.
Exactly. And, while maybe accumulating vast wealth isn't the main goal for everyone listening, these habits still offer really valuable insights. Insights into how cultivating intentional practices can lead to significant achievements and maybe a greater sense of fulfillment in whatever path you choose.
Absolutely. So reflecting on everything we've touched on today, this deep dive into billionaire habits, which one maybe resonated most strongly with you personally, and perhaps more importantly, which is one habit you might actually consider exploring, or maybe incorporating more consciously into your own life?
And maybe that leads to a final thought for everyone listening to consider. Thinking about all these scientifically supported habits we've discussed, what seemingly small, intentional change could potentially have the biggest compound effect on your unique goals, your definition of success? Over the long haul, it's definitely an idea worth taking some time to really chew on.
Definitely. Well, thanks for diving deep into these fascinating insights with us today.